Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome in to PrimeTime Sports Weekend Edition. Eric and Luke back with you here on another fine Saturday morning. And Luke, this will probably be our last Saturday morning show for quite some time now, as we'll be transitioning back to our Monday night slot, given our schedules will be changing up here soon. So we'll talk more about that in this coming week here, but figure we'll move our show to Monday nights. We just have to figure out the time. Maybe we'll do like a 6:30 or something, so that way we can get people ready for Monday Night Football as well. So Luke and I will figure all that out. But for now, let's enjoy Primetime Sports Weekend Edition. And boy, what a day yesterday, and what a couple days here in Chicago sports, Luke.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about today, don't we? This is going to be one of those long shows that we're going to have to cut ourselves off probably at 11:30. But no, we have a ton today on tap. Crazy day yesterday with the trade and a big game, and now we got, of course, the beloved going down in Nashville, Tennessee this evening. So, a lot to talk about today for sure.
We do. So let's run through what the topics are going to be. We'll get those up and running here. As Luke talked about, Lauri Markkanen finished as a Bull. So they trade him to the Cavs in a 3-team deal. We'll go over the details of that trade and what we think the Bulls got out of it and if we thought they could do better.
We'll also, I see what you did there.
See what I did? Yeah. Always looking for creative headlines. What is Lauri's ceiling now? So even though he's no longer a member of the Bulls, do we think he can improve with a change of scenery? Then we'll get into the Cubs and Sox crosstown craziness, a grand return, and pitching was optional yesterday for the most part, judging by the score 17-13. And then that allows us to, whether you like it or not, we're going to have to delve into Dallas Keuchel, or as some people are calling him, Arlington Keuchel or Laredo Keuchel. He's not earning the Dallas moniker lately. Right. Should Raylo take his rotation and playoff spot? So that's the question on the table there. And then we'll talk about the Cubs pitching. And then how does that relate to what is a realistic timeline for the Cubs rebuild, given the current state of their pitching staff? I mean, how quickly can they turn this around? Definitely they're going to need a lot of help. Then when we get into the Bears talk, we're going to talk about the QB1 decision, and Luke and I will give our thumbs up or thumbs down on Andy Dalton over Justin Fields for the Game 1 starter. We're going to talk about Matt Nagy because this has been gnawing at me all week, Luke. The more he talks, the less I want to hear him talk, and quite frankly, the less I want to have him as part of the Bears coaching staff. But we'll get into that. And then the final preseason game. Any reason to watch, so I guess you could always find a reason, but Luke and I will kind of talk through what that might look like. But let's get things started with the Markkanen trade. Again, Markkanen finished as a Bull. Bulls trade Lauri Markkanen to the Cavs in a 3-team deal, with the Bulls getting back Derek Jones Jr., a first-round protected pick from Portland, I believe. And then from the Cavs, they get a second-round pick, which is coming via Denver. So do I have the particulars right there, Luke?
I think you do, and I believe I'm not sure what year the Portland pick is, but I saw that it's lottery protected. So it's going to be, if Portland doesn't make the playoffs, the Bulls won't convey the pick, and if they do, they'll get it. That's pretty much what that means. So it's not a high first-round pick. It's
more like mid, yeah.
Probably more of a mid to, a little later, depending on how Portland does the year they get it. But this, the bottom line with this trade, this is simple for the Bulls. Like, Lauri Markkanen did not want to be here. The Bulls didn't really want Lauri Markkanen here. And it's not from – I didn't think there was a lot of animosity, as Eric tries to –
Yeah, I'm all over the place there. Sorry.
But I didn't think there was any animosity toward either side. I just think both sides kind of recognize that, like, hey, it's time for us to move in a different direction. And with that being known by pretty much everybody, I didn't think the Bulls had much leverage in to be able to swing a trade like this. And You're telling me they were able to get a first-round pick, 2 picks, a first and a second rounder, and a guy who's probably going to be a useful rotation player, at least for this year. He's got an expiring contract, so
Right.
he was kind of a throw-in to make the money work. But Derrick Jones Jr. is a rotational guy. Like, he's not like a scrub. Just, okay, we'll throw this guy in there because his contract stinks. Like, he could play in the NBA. Like, he's not a star or anything. He could play, he'll fill a need off the bench. It gives him wing depth. But the fact that they were able to get things of consequence for Lowry, because number one, he wasn't under contract. And number two, everyone knew he wanted to be gone. So, you had no leverage. And Arturas and Eversley kind of slow played this to circumvent the cap. And I think I've said this on the show before. You need like a PhD in physics to understand the NBA salary cap. Like, it's the most complex thing. I love the NBA, and I sit here and I study and I watch it. I still don't get all the rules. I don't. But they obviously really understand it, and they played it in a way as to where they ended up holding the cards because everyone else kind of had already spent their money in other places. So the Bulls could kind of sift through offer sheets and whatnot before they decided to do a sign and trade with the team that they thought was the most enticing, which ended up being Cleveland. So, I don't know. Again, I don't know if any of this is going to work in terms of how's the basketball fit all going to work. Lowry leaving could blow up in their face. He could turn into a great player. We don't know if any of this what's going to happen. But I am all aboard the fact that this front office is very, very creative.
Yes.
The creativity that it has taken to pull this offseason off should not be overstated. Like, this offseason has been – they walked into this with, like, no cap space, and they've improved the roster like crazy. And now they flipped another chip to get some of the draft picks back that they gave up. Like, it was a brilliant, brilliant offseason for them, and this is kind of the icing on the cake of that. So I think it's a great trade for the Bulls. They lost a lot of draft picks. They get some capital back, which is something they needed to do. And it kind of gives them more ammunition for young players, or gives them more assets to maybe deal in the future.
So, and then first, we want to say hi to Ryan Fahey out there. He wanted us to talk about the Boomers' magic number being 10. That maybe that'll make next week's episode, Ryan. We'll see what their magic number is then. And then Sandra checking in as well. Hi, guys. Go White Sox. Yes, go White Sox indeed. We're definitely going to dive into White Sox talks for sure. I agree with you, Luke. It's to be. I thought the Bulls did as best as could be expected, given that they were in a no leverage situation with Lowry. Everyone knew he wasn't going to be back. He wanted out. The Bulls wanted to turn the page, and exactly as you said, the fact that they were able to get some draft capital out of this, which is something that they're severely lacking in, kind of helps. Granted, it's going to be we will have to assume, I believe it is a 2022, I think. But if they don't make the playoffs this season, the Trailblazers, then obviously that pick is protected. But I think it's highly unlikely that the Blazers don't make the playoffs. So we are talking about a pick, maybe, like you said, like late teens or something like that.
Well, I wouldn't jump out there too quickly on that, because
no,
the Damian Lillard smoke about him potentially kind of trying to force his way out here, it seems to – it's not dying down. So,
I gotcha. I guess leaving that as a caveat, yes.
Yeah. If he's around and he's there the whole season, I agree with you. I think they're probably, in the conversation for like a lower seed, 5 to 8 seed in the West. But if he's gone, then who knows what that means for that pick. And, I'm sure we'll get all the details on all the protections at some point in the coming days, but it'll be, typically how trades work is the further out you get from when the trade was actually made, the lesser the protections on the pick. So that's typically how that works. So, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But, anyway, case in point, like you said, it is the fact that they were able to get some draft pick assets back is important. Number one, because they were lacking them. And number two, it's something that, and we have to keep this in mind because it's been a couple of weeks since we've heard anything, but I would assume we're going to hear something soon. They may lose draft capital in the Lonzo Ball thing in the tampering.
Right.
So at least now you got some more picks back in case you get hit with something for that. And, whether or not that's merited or not, we can have a whole nother show and debate that. But it's just something to keep in mind. They may lose a pick in the next couple of weeks because of tampering allegations. So and now they got some back if they lose some. So that also.
That's a good point and something to kind of keep in the back of our minds there. So, all right, so let's talk about Lowry. So we know from the Bulls' perspective, you're getting a versatile wingman there, a good rotational player, and then the draft capital for Lowry going to the Cavaliers. And it's not like he has a clear path to the lineup there, but let's assume that he will at least get some consistent minutes and be able to show his wares, show his value. What do we think the ceiling is for Lowry in this change of scenery? Do we think it's more of the same, or do we think there's a chance where he could tap more into what his skills are, which primarily to me is just an outside shooter?
Yeah, it's interesting with Lowry. His first couple of years with the Bulls, he was a lot more than just an outside shooter. Obviously, that's the strength of his game. Mm-hmm. But, he was able to put the ball on the floor, take some people off the dribble, and do some creative things offensively. I think the biggest, I think he's someone who was kind of ruined quite a bit by Jim Boylan. I think maybe more than any other player they had. Jim Boylan tried to make him a spot-up shooter, which is not the best way to utilize the skill set. And I'm not saying Lowry's not at fault here either. Obviously, he didn't live up to his billing in his own right. Don't get me wrong. But I think going to a place like Cleveland, where I think he's going to have a more prominent role in what they're trying to do on offense, and they're going to need him to go back and tap into that old skill set of really kind of trying to be able to create. They just paid Jared Allen $100 million to be their center for the next handful of years. And Jared Allen's a nice player, but he's a defensive-minded rim protector type center. So Lauri Markkanen, honestly, is a really good compliment to that. I think that's why he wasn't going to work out in Chicago, because you need a little, with the way their lineup is constructed, they needed someone who's a little more gritty, defensive-minded at the four, which is going to be someone like Patrick Williams, or, they may go out and sign a veteran like a Paul Millsap or something to fill that role. And that's the complete opposite of Lauri Markkanen. He's an offensive-minded player. So I think in Cleveland, he's going to be able to be that next to Jared Allen, and they're going to see if those two can kind of wire some chemistry here and become a pretty effective front court pairing, which I actually think they can. So I think this is a good landing spot for Lowry. He's not going to have a lot of pressure in Cleveland to win right away.
Right.
They're going to be able to kind of figure that out. He's still really young. The one kind of clunky piece in this whole thing is Kevin Love is still there.
Right.
And I was thinking for his mind, he's got to probably want to. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a buyout coming for him. Just so he can maybe go play for a contender again. He doesn't seem to really fit on that team with the way it's going. So, right. And you don't pay Lauri Markkanen 4 years, $60-some million if you don't want him to play a lot. They're going to want to make sure he plays 30 minutes a night. So, I think for him, he's going to a good place. I think he is. And I actually think he's going to do pretty good there once they, maybe kind of clear Love out of there and give him some more chance to get some room. They also picked Evan Mobley out of USC, who's kind of a combo forward, who's pretty exciting. So they got some intriguing pieces in the front court. So and I think he'll be part of that.
Well, so I wouldn't just say just because someone got the salary, they're meaning to play him. I mean, that's more than likely true. But, we saw how much money the Bulls gave Felicio to let him sit on the bench. So sometimes decisions are made. Well, that was the old regime. So we'll move along from that. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see if he is able to take the next step. But this is where there's no more excuses, right? This is all on him. He can't say it's the environment, it's his teammates, it's this or that. Part of his big issue is his lack of assertiveness and just kind of fading when you need him the most. He just kind of fades. Yeah. And whenever he demonstrated he was aggressive, assertive, and wanting the ball and wanting to insert himself into the offense, that was the best version of Markkanen. But we did far too often we didn't see that version, and that's going to have to be the version that blossoms in Cleveland. Otherwise, they're going to be regretting this deal.
So I don't know if you saw, before we move on, I don't know if you saw this stat, but from the moment Arturas and Eversley took over a little over a year ago, there are only 2 players remaining on the Bulls roster from when they took over, and that is Zach LaVine and Kobe White. That's it. Everybody else is already gone.
That's amazing.
And I think this is kind of the nail in the coffin for that, because I don't think, obviously, Zach's not leaving, and I don't think Kobe's leaving at this point. So I knew that they were going to flip the roster. I didn't think it was going to happen in a year. So
yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy. They've come in here and they've completely flipped everything around, and we'll see where this goes. We'll see where this goes. But it's exciting. It is exciting.
Yep. And definitely looking forward to the Bulls season getting underway as we get closer towards October and November. All right, let's move it on to baseball. The Cubs-Sox crosstown craziness. There was a grand return, and Luke, pitching definitely was optional. You were front and center there, live in person at the rate. And wow, I mean, there were so many things that went on in that game. What are some of your top takeaways that would be in there in person?
As cool as that game was, and the fact that they won was awesome, and the comeback was great. My number one takeaway is Dallas Keuchel stinks. It's put it frank, Dallas Keuchel is as washed of a pitcher right now as I can remember watching. He is just he number one, he can't get his off speed over the plate. And my dad and I were saying this last night when we were sitting there watching. They were just sitting on his fastball the entire inning because they knew whenever he threw an off-speed pitch, it wasn't going to over the plate. So I'm just going to sit on his 88-mile-an-hour fastball and then hit it to the moon. I mean, right. That's all they were doing. It wasn't that complicated. And he's just, not only is he really struggling and looks like a shell of himself, but I'm really tired of the old, the excuse making that he tends to make after starts. And then last night, as our buddy Mark pointed out to me over text, he didn't even speak to the media after his start. So now, he couldn't think of an excuse so he doesn't go in front of the mic after that?
Well, so that's interesting. So two takes on that. Was that him saying no last night, but I'll talk today? So was that driven by him? Or was that the Sox PR staff saying, you know what, let's table it for today, regroup, talk to the press tomorrow? Because my understanding is he's going to talk today, which is fine. I don't care if he doesn't talk after the game last night, as long as he talks today. But I am curious to see if he was driving that or if the Sox PR staff was driving it, because exactly what you say, in the heat of the moment when he's in that press conference, he's always doling out excuses. He's always pointing to other things, other teammates, and instead of pointing at himself or looking in the mirror. So either the Sox PR staff has been recognizing that, and this was a way of getting him out of that situation, maybe prepping him for tomorrow, even though I don't think Keuchel's the type that will take to any PR wonks telling him what to say. But it does give him a 24-hour cooling off period for him to figure out what he's going to say, because what took place yesterday was just abysmal.
Yeah, I mean, that was, there's bad, he goes, after the game, La Russa goes, sometimes it's just not your night. That was beyond not your night. That was, not your night is you go 3 innings and you give up 6. that was, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind the Cubs would have scored 10 runs by the end of the second inning if he had stayed in the game. He was so abysmal. And if you take a look, and I'm going to pull this up right now, from since the All-Star break, he's got an ERA of 6.9. So, and again, it's not like he was setting the world on fire before then.
No.
So my question is, what are we doing here? You're trying – I understand Dallas Keuchel's a veteran who's got experience, and you brought him in here for a reason and all that stuff. But it's August 28th. You're heading on a crash course toward the playoffs and trying to win the pennant, World Series. This is not a time to hand out the Lifetime Achievement Award. This is not the season for that. You need to pitch the best pitchers. And anyone watching the White Sox right now, if you could name the top 12 pitchers on the team, you wouldn't put Dallas Keuchel in that group, starter/reliever. You would not put him in the group of the top 12.
But this goes to the question that I have up there, Luke, is, do you just make the switch and put Reynaldo Lopez in his spot for the rest of the season, and then potentially Lopez takes Keuchel's playoff roster spot, because you're not going to have more than 4 starters in the playoffs. And it was, at this rate, it was never going to get down to Keuchel. Cease has cemented his spot in the rotation. It's going to be Giolito, it's going to be Lynn, and it's going to be Rodon. So it's about, what are you going to do with Dallas Keuchel? What are you going to do with Reynaldo Lopez? And right now, you got to envision Reynaldo Lopez being on that playoff roster for what he can do, as a, not as a spot starter, but being able to eat up innings and being effective, versus Dallas Keuchel coming out of the bullpen. He's never had a role like that, really. So that's what it is. However, given that you have a 10-game lead in the division, you're not being seriously challenged. The only thing you would really be playing for right now is home field advantage, maybe passing the Astros. It'll be probably tough to get the Rays, but at least trying to move up a notch so that you have one of the better records. Do you let Keuchel figure it out for the rest of the year, and then you make your call then?
So at this point, I don't know what trying him out every 5th day here does. There comes a point in time where you just keep throwing the guy out there to figure him out, to let him figure it out. It's not their best course of action. And I think we've reached that point with Keuchel. We've just been trying him out for a month and a half, waiting for him to figure it out, and it's getting worse. So what I think needs to happen is, Sandra's saying, could he be hurt, and not saying anything? The cool part about the MLB, as Eric and I'd like to point out, is you don't have to actually be hurt to go on the injured list.
The Phantom IL is coming to a town near you.
So let's have the White Sox roll out the big spinner that's in the locker room somewhere that's got the oblique, groin, hamstring.
No, his will be the back. His will be the back.
Yeah.
Remember, because he had back issues last year.
Have Dallas come up there, and this morning he spins the wheel. Oh, hey, you got a hamstring. All right.
Yeah.
We'll see you in 10 days.
So this will be the story. He didn't talk to the press last night because he was in the trainer's room getting looked at, and then today he magically goes on the IL. You could see that happening.
And I honestly, I texted this I told my dad this last night. I think I texted Mark this. I would be surprised, mildly surprised, not full, but mildly surprised if your scenario does not happen this morning or this afternoon or whenever.
For the IL? Yeah.
If I had to bet, not a lot of money, but if you made me bet one way or the other, I would bet by 6 o'clock he's on the injury list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Number one, this is a good time for it. They got 2 days off coming up. You could 10-day him. He's theoretically doesn't even have to miss a complete turn through the rotation. If you really want to have him keep starting, which again, you got all this time, you also just need someone to go out there and eat innings.
That's what I'm saying. So that's why I'm not as, in a race to get him out of the rotation. But if he can only go 1 inning, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't. And I think he needs number one, he needs to look at himself in a dang mirror and ask himself, what's the problem here? Because, again, I'm tired of hearing these gosh darn excuses. Like, that
Right.
just needs to happen.
Yep.
Number two, he needs to just go take a break for 10. Go stop. Don't pitch for 10 days. Come back. Try again. Like that's what we need to do here. So, at the very minimum, if you're not going to IL him, I would skip his start through the next turn. You got 2 off days coming up here.
Right.
You can skip them and still give everyone an extra day's rest. So that's 100% what I would do. And then, hopefully he gives you 3 or 4 more starts. And, unless he goes out there and throws 3 shutouts the rest of the season, in no way, shape, or form am I having him on the playoff roster. I don't want to hear this experience thing.
Right.
Okay, that's cool. That's great. But it's one thing to have experience. The other thing to have the experience when you're giving up 6 runs a start. Like, I don't care what your experience is if you suck.
Well, he's like the White Sox version of Jake Arrieta right now, without any storied White Sox past. I mean, he was a Houston Astro World Series winner, so he's got that to his resume. But the guy, he hasn't been the same, and we talked about this last year's show, things like that. He has not been the same since I think he did that 120 pitch effort that Ricky's Boys Don't Quit put him through. So after that, and then he was injured and he had the bulky back, and he hasn't been the same since. So I'm not saying that, that's the root cause here, but he's flamed out quickly with the White Sox. He has never, because last year, the first half of last year, even though it was an abbreviated season, he looked pretty strong. He looked like the guy we thought we were going to get.
He finished top 5 in Cy Young.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
So, but it just, something needs to be different here. And again, I know that we need someone to just eat some innings here because we're trying to give everyone the proper rest. And I agree that needs to be at the forefront. But based off of what I saw last night and what I've seen recently, combined with the excuse making,
right,
which isn't good, there's no way that, and I know the Sox locker room is fantastic and everyone's pretty together, but there's no way that, Tim Anderson or Eloy are sitting there listening to Keuchel's comments after starts and not going, really? Are you serious?
Right.
There's no way that's not happening. Someone's thinking that. And the more it happens, the more people are going to think that. So all that combined, I'd almost rather see Mike Wright pitch at this point. Or just anybody. I don't care. If he's going to be like this, then screw off. That's just my opinion. But I understand the need to eat innings, so we'll see what they do with that. But but on the flip side of that allowed Lopi last night.
That's right.
To give
shout out Mark,
one of the best relief performances that we have seen in a long time. I heard on the radio on the way home that was the first time a Sox reliever threw 5 or more perfect innings in a game since 1917.
And we all know what happened that year. World Series, baby.
So, I mean, that just goes to show you the rarity, though, of what happened, especially in today's game. You don't typically see guys with those long stints out of the bullpen.
Right. And
he comes out, and they didn't record a base runner for 5 innings. He struck out 7 guys. And, that's also kind of what highlights the Keuchel thing is immediately, as soon as Lopez comes in, it looks like the Cubs have never seen a ball in their life.
Right.
And the minute, and before that, they looked like this was Murderer's Row from, the 27 Yankees. So I think that underscores both things. It underscores how bad Keuchel's been and how good Lopez has been. I mean, he's turned into one of the best stories on the White Sox in 2021. And there's a lot of really good ones. So that's saying something.
I know. Well, and shout out to LASIK eye surgery for Reynaldo Lopez. So apparently he was having trouble seeing the signs, maybe even seeing the glove. So he got laser eye surgery and, but he was still scuffling in the minors. But, man, he's found it up here without a doubt. So if he can continue that, I mean, that's the guy that we saw in 2018.
Yeah, and I would argue that this is better than the guy we saw in 2018. right now. Like he is. Yeah, the Keiko will probably say something like that. He comes out, but
you're going to take his mic away, Mark.
Lopez he's just been a completely different pitcher from what we've ever seen him. He's more aggressive. He's attacking. I feel like he's trusting his stuff a lot more.
Yep.
You mentioned the laser eye surgery. I also think, Ethan Katz probably deserves a ton of credit for Lopez. I would think that he's probably a pretty key reason as to why Lopi has managed to turn this thing around. I think probably the work he's done. We've heard a lot about how cerebral and the mental approach that Katz has with a lot of these pitchers. And that's something, we all knew Lopez lacked focus. Like that was his biggest thing. It seemed to be, and a lot of times is he kind of would just lose focus on the mound, and you can't do that in the MLB. And he's
Same
been
thing
locked
with
in.
Cease. Same thing with Cease.
Yeah. And they both have been locked in, both of those guys, for a while. I know a lot of people are metrics people out there, but I'm looking at this right now. ERA plus is like one of the new pitching metrics that kind of puts everyone on an even playing field. Since he's been called up, he's got the best ERA plus on the Sox at 272, which basically means he's 172% better than the average pitcher.
That's
so
Reynaldo Lopez. I mean, think about that.
So that right there is just, you can take metrics for what they're worth, but that's just an incredible takeaway that he's been that good.
And then if you just boil it down to just like pitching 101, he's throwing strikes early in the count. Reynaldo Lopez falling behind in the count was a disaster. And this is true for every pitcher, but especially for Lopez, his ability to throw strikes early in the count sets everything up. And so I think he's in a good spot. The other thing is coming out of the bullpen, maybe he doesn't have to worry about, having a plan of attack. It's just go in and pitch. So that might have been some of the reason for the 5, hitless, scoreless innings yesterday, but whatever. Again, he's been a breath of fresh air. Yeah. For the White Sox when they needed it the most. So he's really helped save that bullpen a lot. And yesterday was a great example of that.
Walks per 9. Best on the team is Liam Hendricks. Second best, Reynaldo Lopez. Who would have thought that would be a thing, right?
Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah.
Who'd have thunk it? All right, let's move back. Let's go back. We haven't talked about Yasmani Grandal and the return of Yaz yesterday. That was something to behold. 4 for 6, 2 3-run homers, a 2-run double. Scored 2 runs himself. Caught a pretty good game. Pretty decent. Coming back from tendon surgery on his knee. That was quite the return, and he was heating up from a power standpoint before he suffered the tendon injury. So his loss was pretty significant because he's one of the few guys who could provide you with some left-handed pop. Now, we had Gavin Sheets for a stretch there providing it. Jake Lamb occasionally would throw things in there, but when you have Grandal in your lineup, whether he's catching or DH, it just makes that lineup look that much deeper, and that was on display yesterday.
Yeah, 8 RBIs last night, which tied a career high. So I thought for sure, I'm like, that's got to be the most he's ever had. Apparently he's done it before. But no, they've really missed him in this lineup. I think more, I think they missed Eloy's a better hitter, don't get me wrong, but I almost wonder if they missed Grandal more because of the left-handed aspect of it.
Right.
And he doesn't allow – it's a lot harder to play matchups with the Sox when you have another guy on the left-handed side of the batter's box who can put the ball out of the ballpark on any given pitch. Like, it's a lot harder for a team to kind of, pitch around that. So, last night, they talked about how he was pretty much locked in his last few games in Charlotte. And I kind of knew that was the case when they said on Thursday, he got tossed from his rehab game. Did you see that?
Yeah, I didn't see it. I heard about it, like in the first inning.
He got thrown out, with balls and strikes after his first at bat, which is pretty funny because that tells me, all right, I think he's ready. I think he cares enough now to get up here. But he looks like he was totally locked in. And I think the thing to remember with him, though, they have already said that he's not playing today.
Yes, which
Tony
is smart.
Tony said that in his press conference after the game. And I think the White Sox here, even if he looks good, I think over the next handful of weeks are going to see him get spelled a lot.
Yeah.
And because I think they want to make sure, they want to be extra careful to make sure that he can catch every single game in October.
So let me ask you this. And now I'm maybe changing my mind on this. When they optioned Zach Collins down to Charlotte to bring up Grandal, I thought, given the state of pitching, when the rosters expand by 2 players in September 1, that the Sox would go for 2 pitchers as opposed to bringing up Zach Collins back. However, if you're talking about that load management for Grandal, and if you don't think you can balance that between giving him off days and putting him in the DH spot occasionally, then do you have Collins be one of those 2 players that they can add to the roster September 1st to ensure that you can keep Grandal fresh for the playoffs?
I don't know. I think the roster gymnastics is going to be interesting in the next week or two because you also have Billy Hamilton and Adam Engel waiting in the wings to come off the IL.
That's right.
And
I got to believe Jake Lamb's time has got to be coming to an end.
Yeah, both of those guys are going to be on the playoff roster. Lamb and Engel are going to be on the playoff roster. Hamilton, because of his speed and his defense, perfect October role for someone on your bench. You need to have that.
Wait, you think Lamb will be on the playoff roster?
No, Hamilton.
Oh, okay, Hamilton. Okay.
And we know Engel's probably a right fielder. It'll be interesting to see how they do it, but I almost think with the top 8 they have, they should just prioritize defense in the 9-hole regardless of handedness. So I personally would play Engel every day in right and bat him 9th. But either way, he's going to be on the roster if he's healthy. We know that. So, they gotta, it's pretty easy to just call up those 2 guys to fill up the 2 extra spots. But then what happens with the pitching? What happens with the extra catcher? So I don't know. I really have no idea how they're going to play that. I don't. We'll see which way they lean. But I think it'll be Collins up, those 2 guys, maybe an extra arm like Burr or someone who's down there. You got to think that Mike Wright probably goes down here at some point too. So there's a lot of things to kind of sort out for them. And I think it's just going to be, I really kind of all depends on how they're going to play Grandal. I think you're right. I think how they plan to use him over this next month will highlight the need for a third catcher or not.
And if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to pull up their schedule right now, but they have a lot of off days that they can work with in the month of September. So let me get that pulled up right here. Slow, change that to September. Collating. Yeah, they only play 1 Monday game in September. And so it looks like they have a lot of days off that they can utilize to their advantage. Not only for the pitching staff, but then for resting Grandal as well. So that's something we'll have to look out. Speaking of that, and Sandra brought up the topic here, I wanted to bring that up, the question about Kimbrel. I texted you last night that this game was turning into, I did not want to see either Kimbrel or Liam Hendricks last night. And lo and behold, Craig Kimbrel had to come into this game because Mike Wright was awful. But did he have to come into the game? I mean, was there anyone else you could have thrown in there? Could you have thrown Crochet in there earlier and then let him pitch a little bit longer? I know we're talking about this guy's paid enough money. He's a Hall of Famer. He should be able to come into that situation. But I do think when the Sox are putting him in games is messing with his psyche in terms of what he's coming into, and he's just off. It's not that he doesn't have the stuff, and it's a fair question from Sandra, but I just think right now, he's just not in a good place, and it's affecting his pitching. So I don't know how you manage that if you've already said he's the 8 guy, he's the bridge, and then Hendricks is always going to be the closer. I go back to what La Russa said. It was going to be mix or match, and it has been nothing of that.
The couple things to note with pitching Kimbrel last night. Number one, and the post game, La Russa said as soon as Grandal hit the 3-run homer, they wanted to go Ruiz because the lead stretched from 4 to 7. So they wanted to go Ruiz, and then he said they couldn't get him ready in time. Which to me, I'm just thinking like, well, then why didn't you not warm him up? You knew there was a chance you're going to take a bigger lead, so you should have started throwing him before then.
Right.
But anyway, I understand. 99% of nights I would agree with you. Last night I actually understood bringing him in because, and people may roll their eyes at this, but he and Grandal have never thrown to each other before. Like Grandal hadn't been here; he'd been down in the minors, and Kimbrel gets here. So this is probably the first time they even ever met each other. So I think having them be able to pitch in a lower level situation that kind of build some of that report the pitcher catcher needs, and obviously Kimbrel and Grandal are going to be pitching and catching a lot. So
right.
They're going to need to do that. So I think I didn't mind it last night. I really didn't. And I thought, you got the off day coming up. You got Hendricks available probably the next 2 days if you need him. So I didn't mind that at all. I don't disagree with maybe the way they're using him is kind of messing with them a little bit. But the bottom line is like, at this point with Kimbrel, like I'm a little tired of it. Like you're on the mound, you got to pitch. I don't care when it is, who it is. Like he just has to be better. That's just the bottom line. Like he just has to be better. If he's not okay with the ninth inning, with all this stuff, then he needs to go into Tony and say something. Maybe he has. I don't know.
Right.
But I think number one, he just needs to be better. Number two, then maybe Tony needs to sit down with Liam and Craig and say, okay, how do you guys want to work this? You tell me. Like, what's the best way for you guys to do this?
You know how that conversation will go. It'll be like, I don't know, I can do either one you want. Yeah, I can do either one, mate, whatever you want, Yeah. So it's like, crikey. So, And then it'll be like the same thing. It'll be Hendricks closing and Kimbrel being the 8th man. So it's like, I really think the roles should be flip-flop because I don't think it would affect Hendricks as much as it does Kimbrel. Now, again, people want to discount the fact that closer mentality is not a real thing, but it is. But I think if it's affecting Kimbrel first of all, you got a 10-game lead. Flip it for a week or so. See how it goes.
I don't disagree with you on that. That I would do that.
They're one of the few teams with a divisional lead where you can mix and match, give guys off, load management, and experiment heading into the postseason. So you've figured out what is everything going to look like come October 3rd.
I don't disagree with anything you said 100%. I would do that too. I would flip the 2 for a week and just see what happens because this bullpen's been a train wreck for the better half of a month now.
Right.
But I also, at the same time, I am also just like, well, if that doesn't work for Kimbrel, then what? Like I'm frustrated. I'm really frustrated with Kimbrel, the pitcher, right now.
Right.
Like you go from being this guy who's going to the Hall of Fame, and all of a sudden he comes to the Sox, and he's got his ERA with the Sox is 7.15.
It's bad.
Like I don't care what inning you're pitching in. Like you need to be better than that. Like
I don't disagree. But the thing is, the Sox also have to make a call on that option going into next year, let alone what it's going to look like the rest of the year, and then how often are you going to use him in the playoffs. So I just think it's time to you have a little window of opportunity to experiment. Go ahead and do it. See if you can get Kimbrel right, and then see if Hendricks can maintain, and then you're in a pretty good position there. And then hopefully Michael Kopech, that was a blip on the radar there in terms of that awful performance that he had in Toronto, so he can get past that.
They just can't get, aside from Hendricks in like May, June, July.
Yeah.
They just haven't had someone in the bullpen have like a long stretch of consistency.
Right.
Like they got all these good pieces and they're all good in different spots, but they haven't been good for a long period of time this year. Yeah. And that's the frustrating part, because we all sit here, we all look at the names, we all know that this bullpen should be really, really good. Like, it should be really, really good. And once you start to think like, okay, like I thought for the last couple of outings, I'm like, okay, Crochet's turning it around. I think maybe we got something here. And then last night he goes up and just terrible. So it just doesn't. No one can be consistent for a long period of time, and that's the frustrating part.
Right. Same thing with Aaron Bummer. It's like, I think Bummer's found something here. No, didn't find that. So
now it's watch. Right now, the guy that I'm like, okay, maybe he's found something is Tepera. Tepera's been great.
Yeah.
Really, since the first couple outings with the Sox, he's been fantastic. Now watch. The next time he pitches, he'll probably go up and give up bombers. Like that's just the way it's been.
Well, maybe don't have him pitch against the Cubs. Wait till the Cubs are gone, so we can spare him that. But yeah, the bullpen is the concern. I know, Mark's talking about buying a case of beer for October, but it is. It's like if there's the one thing you worry about this team, aside from like stupid base running mistakes and maybe the untimely error, which, that happens, but the Sox their base running though is, can be questionable. Yeah. But if you boil it down to the biggest concern, it is the bullpen. That's why Sandra brought up Kimbrel. So Mark's, talking about the bullpen. What do we do with Lope? Why you and I are talking about Kimbrel via Hendricks and who should be in what role. Kopech, Bummer, Crochet. I mean, it's like if one of those guys, if just one of them stayed locked down, then we could live with some of the roller coasters. But they're all going through roller coasters, and it's coming at an awful time. And they only have about a month to figure it out. So, all right. So let's get to the Cubs side of this real quick. We know the Cubs are in rebuild mode. All the trades at the trade deadline and a little bit before that. The White Sox taking advantage of some of that, but the pitching that the Cubs have been rolling out is horrific. So the question on the table, Luke, is considering free agency and what they have in their system, what is a realistic timeline for the Cubs to be competitive, given the pitching staff that they currently have, versus how quickly they could turn that around in free agency? I don't know that there is a silver bullet to say in 2 years that Cubs team is going to be back in playoff contention based on what I see from their arms today versus what they could potentially add.
Well, if you ask Ricketts and Hoyer, they're not in a rebuild.
Right. Of course not.
But I don't know, man. I think it's because, the only way they're not going to be in a rebuild is just to go out and they spend a lot of money this offseason, right?
Right.
But there's two caveats to that to me. Number one, like who's going to want to come here? And I'm not just saying that because I don't like the Cubs. Like, guys want money. Guys also don't want to go to a team where they're going to sit through a 5-year losing period at the same time. Like, so who are you spending the money on? And two, if you were going to spend money, then why didn't you just pay all the guys you had? Why didn't you just pay Bryant and Rizzo and then try to supplement around them with different pieces?
Well, but that brings me to the point is none of those guys pitched, so it's like they traded Darvish before the season started, and he's scuffling a little bit. He's had some injury issues, and he's scuffling now, but he was clearly the Cubs' best pitcher last year, and so he wasn't available. Hendricks hasn't been the same pitcher that he usually is. He's, for the most part, you know what you're going to get from Hendricks for the Cubs, but he hasn't been as consistent, but he is their best pitcher by a long shot or by miles. So what else do they have? I mean, they have some interesting, intriguing arms, but if there's free agent pitchers to be had, like Robbie Ray's out there, he'll be a free agent. Carlos Rodon will be a free agent. If the Cubs are going to invest free agent dollars, I guess the question is, are you doing it on the pitching side? Or are you doing it on the position player side?
I mean, you look at their system, the only two guys that they have in their minor league system that are, kind of their top 10 guys that you could say are going to make an impact next year are Brennan Davis, the outfielder, and possibly the catcher, Miguel Amaya, who probably is maybe another year away after that. So,
right.
Like, Brennan Davis is the only guy that next year I think probably factors in their outfield, which will be nice because they need some young talent in the offense too. But pitching-wise, their best young pitcher, Brilliant Marquez, hasn't pitched this year. I think he's been hurt all year. Right. So, and after that, it's a bunch of guys in double, single A. So they got – it's bad. The pitching's bad now, and no one's coming. So they're going to have to –
Well, you say that. I mean, you say that, but free agent pitchers are a different bird. I mean, yes, there's only so many free agents that can – I only want to go to a currently winning environment.
No, I meant in their system.
In their system.
The pitching's bad now and no one's coming.
Right.
They got nobody coming
no
up
one's
the pipeline
coming. Got
next year.
Okay.
To help them on the roster. No, I mean, I agree that they'll be able to go out there. They'll be able to fill a rotation with 1 to 2 year contract veteran guys, like the Scott Feldmans of the world and the Jake Arrietas of the world. And, like they'll be able to go find major league players that want work. So, like, that won't be the problem. But, like, what does that get you? It gets you from 53 wins or 60 wins to 70. So I don't see a path to contention for the Cubs for at least another, maybe 2024. I'm thinking maybe.
Yeah.
And if a lot of these young guys like Crow Armstrong and Ed Howard and some of these other guys they got down there like really pan out, that's what has to happen.
So do you think, regardless if it's a pitcher or position player, do you think the Cubs will sign a big ticket free agent going into next season, assuming there is a next season? No. Okay, so no, Nick.
Well, define big ticket.
Like Castellanos.
I'm still going to say no.
Okay.
I think they're going to try.
Carlos Correa.
The shortstop market is interesting. It is a little different because there's a lot of them.
Right.
So if the Cubs are going to sign one guy, it'll probably be a shortstop just because I think there's going to be a bit of a trickle-down effect between, like, Correa, Baez,
Story, right. Good idea, Mark.
There's a lot of those guys out there. So the Cubs may get one just based off the fact that there's going to be a lot of suitors and the Cubs will just be able to throw the money at them. So I think that if there is a place they sign the big ticket free agent, it's probably there. I would still lean on the side and no. I don't know if that's the smartest move for the Cubs. I think the smartest move for the Cubs is to do a little, like, and people don't want to hear this, but the smartest move for the Cubs is to sort of do what they did last time.
Do the long play?
It is. Is it not?
Yeah. I don't disagree. Because it's not like you're wasting anyone on the current roster. It's like, it's like, and we're going to get into the Bears talk next, but it's like you got Justin Fields sitting here and you're playing Andy Dalton. You're wasting this time, development time. That'll be, part of our discussion. Whereas the Cubs next year, who are you wasting? You're not necessarily wasting Wilson Contreras or Kyle Hendricks, huh?
I said Contreras.
Wilson Contreras. Right. Yeah. And right, Mark's talking about maybe you should trade Contreras too. Get some starting pitching, but there's a lot of ways that they can go. But you're right. There's no one on that current roster that they're wasting their playing time, save maybe Wilson Contreras. Kyle Hendricks is a little bit different because you got more cost control with him and you need a starting pitcher. But maybe you trade Contreras and then you play the long play here, because I think they've gotten some good players back from the trades that they made, but it's going to take time, and maybe they can facilitate that even more.
If I'm the Cubs, I look in that mid-tier free agent bucket. I sign multiple 1 to 2 year contract guys with the intent of flipping them for prospects, like they did with Feldman and some of these other guys they did the last rebuild.
Right.
And you build up your prospect base that way. You give yourself a deeper system, and then you're going to be bad. So over the next 3 years, you draft yourself 3 blue chip top end prospects, picking top 5 and top 10 in the draft. And then boom, by 2024, you have yourself a top 5-10 system ready to contend, and you're getting excited again. To me, just throwing money at Correa and putting all the eggs in that basket, I don't understand what that does, other than puts an extra 5,000 people in the stands every game. Which that cannot be the priority if you're an MLB franchise. You need to have a plan to build a sustained contender.
Well, but there's also the thought you need a marquee player to build around too. So is Correa that guy? Is Castellanos that guy? I don't really know.
Yeah, but if you remember the last rebuild, the marquee player they built around was a prospect they called up in Rizzo.
Right.
They didn't have the guy either.
Right.
So, I think that question by and large will end up answering itself.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I think that's the way I would approach it. And maybe Cub fans don't want to hear that because they just did it. But was it not worth it? You want a ring.
All right. Well, let me flip it the other way, and this isn't 100% the same scenario, but you could make the case that the White Sox have built their roster around Jose Abreu finally.
Yeah.
Because he had a lot of wasted years on bad White Sox teams. So now he's reaping the benefits of that.
Yeah, you could. And I think that guy for the Cubs, but you see, I think the Cubs had that guy and they traded him.
Well, yeah.
I think that guy could have been Rizzo again.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the Cubs have that guy right. Is Wilson Contreras that guy? I don't know if he's tough. That guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if Wilson Contreras is the guy to shepherd a bad team through a rough spot to come out on the other side like Abreu was and Rizzo was. Contreras doesn't strike me as that kind of player.
Right.
Maybe it's on the pitching side. Maybe it's Kyle Hendricks.
Maybe it is, yeah.
I know he hasn't been super great this year, but I don't think anyone's super concerned about Kyle Hendricks moving forward, right? So
Kyle Hendricks is a guy. He'd be like the same pitcher 4 years from now as he is today.
Yeah.
So if anyone's going to be around for the contention window, it's Hendricks more so than it would be Contreras.
So maybe that guy you're talking about is a pitcher. Maybe it's Kyle Hendricks. Maybe it's not a position player.
Yeah, you might be right on that. All right, well, let's move it into the Bears talk as we get ready for the final preseason game today in Nashville against the Titans. Bears QB1 decision, thumbs up or thumbs down. For game one, Luke. Oh, man, I've been so on the fence with this one. Down.
I agree with you. I'll give it a down.
Yeah.
But, this goes back. Everything to me stems back to how pissed I am that they can't, the media is not allowed to cover the team pretty much in camp, because I feel like all we hear is Matt Nagy go, Dalton's looked good in camp, and people, they say that there hasn't been any separation between the two in camp, but none of us know that for sure because we can't freaking watch or have it covered by the press. So, like, we have no idea.
Right.
We have no one who can offer an unsolicited, unbiased opinion. So, for all we know, Andy Dalton could have zero completions in camp, and they're just like, so that's annoys me to no end. But you know, if Andy Dalton, if outside of the preseason games, because I think in the preseason games we all can see and agree that Justin Fields has outplayed Andy Dalton.
Right.
Like, so, but if in camp, if in practices, there truly hasn't been much separation between the two, then I am okay with that. Then I am okay with them not starting him.
Well, wouldn't you go the other way then? If there's no separation between the two, then play the rookie.
I am okay with that because I do think there is something to be said. I think it's less of a thing than it used to be, but I still think there is something to be said to have a guy wait and learn in wings a little bit. But then again, that's if he's not ready. If they're both not separable and you still think Fields is ready, then he should be playing.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of layers to this question. But I don't care, and I've been saying this from day one. I don't care what the plan is or what Nagy wanted the plan to be or anyone wants the plan to be. If they take the field and Dalton is crap and the players in the locker room start looking at Matt Nagy and going, what the heck are we doing? He's going to change. Like, the plan's going to change very fast at that point in time because that's the fastest way for him to lose the locker room is if they keep trying out this tomato can when you got a Ferrari waiting in the garage that's a much better player and everyone on the team knows it.
Right.
It happened with Trubisky and Glennon. Like, I remember after that Packers game in 2017, I think it was week 3 or week 4, they had a game in Green Bay on Thursday night, I think it was, where it was the third game in a row where Mike Glennon was just an absolute heaping pile of garbage. And basically after the game, Akeem Hicks was like, we got to start looking in the mirror and asking ourselves, are we giving our team the best chance to win with who's on the field? Like, he basically completely pointed the finger at John Fox and was like, what are we doing? And that was with Trubisky. So what do you think these guys are going to be saying about Field? Like, if Dalton's bad and you got Field sitting there?
So I think the difference will be, though, is if the Bears' offensive line is as horrible as we may think it might be, that could be the cover. It's like, okay, there's two schools of thought there. It's like, well, with a line that bad, you need a quarterback in there who can at least know how to get rid of the ball quicker because that's not one of Fields' strengths. His strength is, deep passes, strong arm, but he does hold on to the ball longer and recognizing when he needs to get rid of it sooner. Yes, he's got the athleticism to scramble, but we're not out there trying to make him a spinning top. So you could go either way with that.
And he has looked good at extending plays in the preseason, but he's also extending plays against number 2 defenses, which, again, I mean, he's played with number 2 guys himself, but the point by what I'm saying is he's also extending plays against guys he's much more faster and athletic than, which will it be more athletic than defensive linemen on first teams? Sure, but they're still going to be faster and quicker than second-team defensive linemen.
Right.
Like, Aaron Donald is faster and quicker than any second-team lineman for the Bills. So if Aaron Donald's barreling down unblocked, I don't know if you're going to be able to extend that play. So, but to that end, I hope tonight. I don't know what the Titans' plan is, but I hope they play a lot of their ones on defense. I want to see Field go up against some ones on defense. I want to see how he does. I want to see that question answered. Is he going to be able to extend those plays against first-team defenses? And it sounds like the Bears are going to play their first-team line, but they may not play all their skill guys. So that's what it sounds like the plan is. So we'll see. But I think to go back to your overarching question, I give it a thumbs down because I don't think it gives them the best chance to win. But I do kind of see both sides of the coin. But it is in the back of my mind that is Dalton playing just because he was promised, that's a problem in of itself if that's the case.
Which brings us to our next topic, which I think these are interrelated, is the Bears and Matt Nagy. So how long will they stay together? So this is whether they say it or not, and they say it, like Pace has said it, but when the rare opportunity talks, but Nagy has said it, it's about winning. We need to win. This season's about winning. I don't expect the Bears to have more than 7 wins this year, and I think that's like their ceiling. So, and Vegas doesn't, 7.5, I think, is the win total for them, but that doesn't drive what a coach does. The coach is looking at what gives, it's like, I need to put the team in the best chance to win. And I think right now I got to give it to the experienced quarterback, Andy Dalton. So that's why he was named the starter, even though I had this, well, we'll see what happens in camp. But Andy's our QB1, and then there he is. So that factored into the decision. But then we just pull back out a little further. Do we think Matt Nagy's the right guy to coach this team? And he made a comment this week about, I told you guys before, it takes about 3 or 4 years for an offense like this to be integrated. Like, what? First of all, your personnel, for the most part, on the offensive side of the ball has overturned since you came to the program. You got different quarterbacks. You got different tackles. You got different running backs. The only one who's still here is Allen Robinson and maybe some of the interior linemen, but you got a new center. So you have all these different offensive players and some new coaches. And then magically in year 4, my offense is, it takes a while for everyone to learn this off. You got different players. Does that mean each time we get new players, it's going to take that player 4 years to get up to speed? So it's such a crock. And it's him. It's like he's like the Dallas Keuchel of coaches right now, in terms of throwing out excuses. He's already making his pre-excuses for why the Bears are going to suck, is how I envision this. And I just, the more I think about him as the head coach, the more I think about this team mired in mediocrity. And because of him and Ryan Pace may be tied at the hip, and because Justin Fields' presence is going to give them another year, like a bye year, before they're actually on the hot seat. So I think we're in for 2 more years of crap football from the Bears.
So I just threw I don't know if you want to throw the quote, the full quote up on the screen. This was Matt Nagy. And I always, this quote made me think in Bear coach history, there's always the one quote the coach says that completely loses my credibility with the guy.
Yeah.
This is it for Nagy.
Yes.
The John Fox was when he forgot the kicker's name.
Right.
The Mark Trestman was I don't know what I did here. I heard a lot about it, but from what I did here, I did not hear anything. You remember that one? And the Lovie Smith one for me was there was a game they got killed by the Bengals. I forget what year it was. They went and absolutely got killed by the Bengals. And they asked, what happened? Why was the game as lopsided as it was? And he goes, well, the Bengals came out with a purpose. And I'm just like, so what was our purpose? We didn't have a purpose. I can think back to every Bears coach, and there's always the one quote that I always am like, okay, I'm done. And I'm there with Nagy probably with this.
Yes, there he is.
Imagine going, and I know, I always kind of poo-poo these comparisons because the real world is not sports. But I envision going into your job, and you're doing a bad job, and you go, well, it takes me 3 or 4 years to get really good at my job. You'd be fired before the meeting ended. So it's just, but the thing about it is I'm trying not to focus on it all that much because Matt Nagy's going to be here next year. Like, Ryan Pace is going to be here next year.
Right. It would have to take like a 2-15, like just a 2-15 turn of a season. And even then, I'm not convinced. It's like, well, with those 2 wins, it's like you could see Phillips and
one of
George.
Our wins was versus the Packers. About 4 wins.
Got that one. Woohoo!
So it's, I'm trying not to worry about that aspect of it that much, just because I think it's I won't say fool's gold because that's kind of harsh, but I think it's very wishful thinking to start feeling like, well, I don't know if Matt Nagy is going to be here for the long run. I think he's here next year.
Right.
But
but that's the whole point, Luke, is if he is here next year, and let's say Fields takes the field, I don't know, game 6 or whatever, and so now the Justin Fields era has started, and you still see the crappy offensive game planning that goes in, and the play calling that has been questionable since the start, and they don't have talent on the offensive line, and you don't think that they can remedy that next year because they'll have their cap issues next year, and they where they're going to draft, who remains to be seen, but still, they gave up some capital too. So I don't see a quick fix next year if they suck this year. So that's why this year is so important. Yeah. Because then we're saying, as Bears fans, we have to kick the can until 2023 because Matt Nagy's insured to be here for 2 more years, as is Ryan Pace.
And I think the thing to kind of watch again, and the story of the year for me, as soon as Fields, takes over, we're going to learn, and I've been saying it, we're going to learn, was it Nagy or was it Mitch with the play calling and with the scheming and all of that stuff? Was it Nagy or was it Mitch? And that will tell the story to me.
Will we learn, though? Is it that simple? Because what if Fields is just that much better of a talent than Trubisky, which he is, but so he could gloss over some of the flaws of a Matt Nagy offense just by who he is. So I don't know if that answers the question.
I think it's pretty simple. I think if the offense is clicking and Fields is doing really well, then I think Nagy is safe. And if he's not, then he's not.
Well, that's 2 different questions. You're saying safe versus should he, you know what I mean? It's like you're saying he's safe because Fields is performing well, the offense is clicking. Is that credit to Fields or is that credit to Nagy?
Well, if we're saying, I guess it's credit to it's the chicken or the egg thing, right? I guess it's kind of credit to both.
Yeah.
But I think to ask should, I think we both said we thought we would have fired him last year. We would have fired both of them last year.
Right.
I think the should portion of this is completely out the window. I think we both agree that he probably should not be here at the moment.
Right.
And as frustrating as Matt Nagy is, and as bad as he has been the last 2 years, I still question. And I know, who knows what we would change to. I think knowing what we would change to is a big part of this for me too. But I still question whether or not it's smart or not to switch systems and coordinators for a quarterback so early in his career. Mm-hmm. That derails quarterbacks more than any other thing. So, I don't know. I think there's a lot. Again, I think there's a lot of layers to that question too. I think it's a lot more simple than is Matt Nagy is he an idiot or not? But I think there's a lot of layers to that question, which I think in a lot of ways he is an idiot. So I don't even know if that's a question. But
I don't know if he's an idiot. I just think he told
us he's not, because he says he knows he needs to run the football. I'm not an idiot.
But it's just that he is so ingrained into what his vision of this, his version of the Kansas City offense should look like for the Bears, that there's no flexibility with it. There's just this stubbornness to implement a system versus adapt the system to the talent that's around you. And the only time they didn't, he wasn't the one calling plays, so that's why That's my biggest. It's not about leadership. I think he's a good leader. I think the players play hard for him on both sides of the ball. But play calling is the system, and then developing players in that system. That's what's in question. And so you could say the worst thing you can do to a young quarterback is change the system. What's even worse than that, though, is have him to continue to flounder in a bad system with a bad head coach. So we'll see. But that brings us to the next point here, which is the Bears' final preseason game versus the Titans. Any reason to watch? So we know that Justin Fields will be starting and playing probably most of the first half. Whether or not he's going to go against the first stringers for the Titans defense for an extended period of time is in question. My guess is not. But even let's say that's the case. I may not watch this game, and I haven't watched any of the first two preseason games either, just even with a new quarterback with Justin Fields, because now that the decision has been made, I'm going to evaluate Justin Fields on whenever he takes the ball in the regular season. So there's nothing for me to evaluate about Justin Fields. Nothing that I see tonight will tell me anything about Justin Fields. In my eyes, it really won't. And there's no other position battles that I'm really concerned about in this last preseason game, because the roster is what it is. Depth where they have it and depth where they don't. It is what it is. There isn't anything intriguing for me to watch. So my answer is no. I'm probably going to be watching the Cubs-Sox game, and I'm not even going to tape this game. Record.
Well, number one, I'm recording both.
Of course.
We're going to see Jungle Cruise tonight.
I liked it.
Okay, good. So I'm glad to hear that you like.
Do you like rock?
I do.
He's fun, and so he's always fun. I love Emily Blunt too, so I thought it was a fun movie. You guys will enjoy it.
So we've decided to have a little bit of a date / movie night. So we're going to do that, and then I'm like, all right, I'm taping the Bears, I'm taping the Sox, and watch when I get home. So
that's an APB to everyone watching. Yeah. Don't text any scores or commentary.
I may leave my phone at home completely. Like one of us will have You need something happens, text Emily. So I agree. I will watch the Sox first. That is probably what I will do, because I am more concerned about that tonight. But with the Bears, I think there's a lot of things. Number one, I know it's not from an evaluation standpoint, but anytime Justin Fields takes the field in the preseason, I want to see it. I'm intrigued to see what this guy can do. I'm intrigued to see the way he reads defenses and how he extends plays and whatnot. I kind of want to see how, if there's any sort of miscommunications or things, him working with the first team line. And I think there's a lot of lower, I know a lot of normal fans or casual fans. I know you and I care about this stuff, but other people out there probably don't. But I want to see, like, is Rodney Adams locked up on the roster? Like, who's that second corner position with Vildor and Trufant and Artie Burns, all those guys? That's up in the air. Like, that tonight's a big game for that. So, like, things like the kick returner. Like, to me, I haven't seen a kick returner that matters yet. Right. Like, everyone who they've thrown back there is sucked. Like, I want to see if they answer that question. Like, I want to watch those things to see what happens.
Right.
So what I'll probably do is I'll probably watch the first half and then kind of look at Twitter after that and see, like, okay, are there any big highlights I missed in the second half? Anything I should know? Stuff like that. I'll probably watch until Fields leaves the game. It's probably what I'll end up doing.
Yeah.
But it'll be Sox, whole Sox game, then Justin Fields with the Bears, maybe a little bit of the defense, depending on who's out there, and that'll probably be it. So.
Yeah, and then it'll be on to the regular season in game one, Sunday night, 2 Sundays from now against in LA, right?
Yes, yeah. Bears, Rams.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that.
I told my dad this yesterday. Bears are one of 3 teams that are tied for the biggest underdog of the week. It's like the Cowboys at Tampa, and I think the Lions are playing. They're hosting San Francisco or someone good. All three teams are -7.5. So
Wow.
those were the three biggest dogs of the week, and that the week one. So.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I have no plans to watch the game. Like I said, maybe I'll check the Twitter feed for some highlights or for some Justin Fields packages and whatnot. But whatever comes out of that game, I don't think it's going to be anything groundbreaking for this team. It's all points to the September 12th when the season starts in earnest for the Bears. So, all right. So that is our show. Our next show, as we talked about, is going to be on a Monday night. So not this month. I don't think we're this Monday night.
I think we'll have to
talk
about them.
Yeah. So Luke and I have to figure all this out. So we'll get it communicated here, but we're going to be off Saturdays for an extended period as we have different schedule conflicts and whatnot. So we'll move it back to Mondays. We'll figure out the time and we'll get that communicated. As always, want to thank everyone for tuning in. Mark there, I'd rather text Emily to talk to her anyway. So go ahead, Mark. So good comment there, but want to thank everyone for tuning in, everyone for commenting. Appreciate you watching us. You guys have a great Saturday, whatever you're doing, and we will talk to you next time on Primetime Sports.